Greetings, comic lovers, and welcome back to Casually Comics, the channel where we chat all things comics, from reviews of comics new and old to history to anecdotes, really wherever our whims take us. I know a lot of times some of you wonder about some of the books back here. Well, you're about to learn the origin of some of them. These are the first 3 books of the Northern Lights series. Today, I am thrilled to say that we are going to be doing an interview with the author Malin Falch, and she was kind enough to forgive that during the interview I butchered it so hard, even though she had just told me how to say it. It's about par for the course for me. These are a series of largely geared towards children adventure graphic novels, although as you'll see when we talk, it wasn't always going to be that way. They have a very interesting story, both inside and outside the cover, and they're a bit hard to get a hold of. These were sent to me as a gift, and you'll see as we talk about that was necessary. Now, these graphic novels are from Norway, and they have some very interesting Norwegian mythology sprinkled throughout. So if you want to hear all about that, well then stay tuned. It's an interesting conversation. We talk a lot about animation as well. So I'm Sasha, do the YouTube things and enjoy. Listen. Hi everyone, it's Sasha here from Casually Comics, and I'm here with Malin Falch today, and I know that she just told me how to pronounce my name, and her name, I just completely botched it, but it's all good. So she is the author of a graphic novel series called Northern Lights, this wonderful adventure series featuring a young female protagonist just on an adventure in a magical land. And why don't you tell us a little more about it?
The comic is called Northern Lights, and yeah, it's about a girl named Sonja who lives in like a tiny little town in Norway. It's actually a real town. And in the beginning of the comic, a big life events happen in her life. Like she's having her confirmation, which in like Scandinavian culture, at least Norwegian culture, is like kind of like a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah deal. So that happens in the beginning of the comic, and her favorite person in the world, her uncle, comes to visit her, and he has like a little pin thing, the thing on the cover, you know, the thing that Sonja's holding up. He brings that as a gift for her, and she's like, oh, that's cool. And later that night, a stranger comes to Sonja's house, and he wants that pin back. And something is kind of off about this dude. Like, he has a tail, he has pointy ears, and he says he's from a magical land somewhere beyond the Northern Lights, basically. And she starts to get really interested in this, yeah, he takes her on a journey on the Northern Lights, and they end up in a magical version of Norway, kind of like where there's trolls, there's Vikings, there's talking animals, a lot of things that you would see in like Norwegian fairy tales and folklore. I kind of more base it off like folklore than I do Norse mythology, but there's Norse mythology elements too. Yeah, and the whole comic kind of spans out in this universe, and yeah, a lot of different things happen.
So how did you get into comics and writing and drawing them?
I actually been making webcomics pretty much like all the way from high school. I started making them there. I made one webcomic that was called, it was like a zombie comic. And at that time, it was like 2010, 2009. Zombies were like all the rage then. And I love zombies. I made that zombie comic in high school, and I really liked it, but it was a lot of work. When I started university, I moved to the US. I moved to San Francisco in California to do art school. And I kind of like stopped doing comics because I had so much homework, and I kind of shifted my priorities. I now wanted to be a concept artist, and I didn't want to do comics anymore. The comics too much work. And I kind of regret not continuing that comic because it was really fun. Yeah, so I always liked doing comics, but actually the origin of that comic, Northern Lights, it's kind of special, I guess, because it did just start out as like a school project. In one of our classes, I think it was in my second year or third year, I had a class that was called Inspirational Art for Animation. And in that class, we were supposed to take a fairy tale that already like existed and design it to be like a pretend animated movie. And that's kind of like what concept artists do. They make designs for a lot of the time stories that already exist. So we only had 3 stories to choose from, and it was Little Mermaid, Alice in Wonderland, and Peter Pan. And I was like, I'm not vibing with any of these, but the teacher was like, you guys can only choose between these 3. And I'm like, okay, I choose Peter Pan, because I think most people will not choose Peter Pan, because it's a little tricky, I feel, to like redesign that. I've seen plenty of reimaginations of Alice in Wonderland and Little Mermaid. I have not seen that much Peter Pan, so I'm like, okay, I'm choosing that. And I was like, oh god, I don't want to do this project. This is literally what I was thinking. I was like, this is the worst. But then I came up with the idea, what if I make Peter Pan like based off Norwegian folklore and Norse mythology and all the things that I know from my own childhood, you know, being Norwegian and growing up there. And also that would be, you know, kind of unique, I guess, because there wasn't a lot of Norwegian people at my school. I felt like I had something to say there, you know. I felt like I could bring something unique to it. So it did start out as a reimagination of Peter Pan, and if you squint, it's very obvious, I guess. Sonia is Wendy. Peter Pan in my story is called Espen, and Espen is actually the name of like a famous character in Norwegian fairy tales. Like the hero is always called that, so I made that his name. And Captain Hook became like a Viking jarl with like a hook for his hand still, and the crocodile became like a sea serpent, you know. And I made the Lost Boys. I made them little trolls, and I just kept adding all these elements. And so I did that project for that semester, and it was really fun. I don't think I ever had that much fun at school. I did more work than I needed to. And when the project was done and the semester was done, I was like, oh, I can't leave this alone. Like, I gotta make something more. And the only way I kind of knew to continue it was to make a comic, because if I wanted to tell a story, that's how I would have to do it, you know? Because I can't make a movie. I gotta make a comic. So I started a webcomic based on it. And it's kind of the same as you see in the first volume of the comic, but I did have to redraw a few things because the art was a little wonky in the beginning, a little inconsistent. My ideas weren't completely figured out yet. Took a little bit of time to like get that right. And when I had to now like put it into a book, I had to change a little bit, but it's basically the webcomic. That's why I posted online for free.
So I noticed when you've been drawing it and the writing of it, there's a really good flow between, obviously because you're doing both, like the writing and the illustration. So how do you find, like, do you find that that's more time consuming, or what do you find takes the most of your time while you're working on it?
Well, the drawing takes the most time, but the writing takes the most brain power. Because I wouldn't call myself, like, at least I didn't used to be a very confident writer. And I was like, how the hell am I going to do this? Because when the webcomic was just kind of, I just wanted to try and see where it was going to go. When it started being a published book, I suddenly had to think way more about what to actually put in each book. And I had to go through it with editors and other people, and they had to like come with feedback, and it became like this whole other thing. And in the beginning it was really scary. Like I wasn't sure about like how I was gonna do it. Training, doing it a lot. I feel like both are like equally important, equally fun. You know, I'm not sure if that answered your question or not.
When it comes to the story, did you already have an ending in mind when you started? Or like, was it a complete concept, or has it grown as you've been working on it?
Yeah, it was actually a complete concept at first. It wasn't going to be long. It was going to, if I had kept to the plan, I would have been done now. I would have already been done with the story. Yeah, I was like, I want this to be a movie. I want it to read like a movie, and I want it to feel like the length of a movie. So if a person sits down and reads this, it will feel like they watched a movie if they read all of it at once, kind of. That was my plan, because I thought I cannot start another big project that I don't finish. I didn't finish it, by the way, at first, so I kind of failed. I did fail with that. When it started coming out as a book instead of a webcomic, I started coming up with way more new ideas of what I could write. And now it is different from what I started out, but actually the story, if you just take out a couple of elements that I added, it's the exact same idea I had when I started the comic 5 years ago, whatever it was. I started in 2014, so I guess it's been a while. 7 years? No, it can't be.
There's a fourth book in the series that's coming out, or at least it's coming out in like my region like soon. Or like, what is the distribution like situation when it comes to the books getting out to like North America and all of that stuff?
Yeah, so it's very different from what I kind of thought it would be like. It's kind of just it gets published way later in other countries, of course. But actually, the English version that you have read is something that my own publisher makes, only to be sold in Norway, because we can't. There's some laws in Norway that makes it so you can't sell books internationally. Kind of tax thing. So the book that people can read in English is made for tourists here.
Oh.
So my own publisher translates it, and it's sold in bookstores in Norway and at the airport and stuff like that. But unfortunately, it is so hard to find it and read and like buy it online, and it's really frustrating. There's a couple of sites where you can, but the shipping is almost as much as the book itself, you know? So
yeah.
I feel bad advertising that to people. But the fourth one is going to come in winter. It usually comes out a year after it comes out here. So the English is like, I mean, the English version comes out pretty fast, which I'm happy about.
It's interesting. There are weird international like shipping laws that you don't often like think about. I just like a bit of a tangent, but I wanted to send a friend of mine in the States some nail polish, and I went to the post office and I was like, here you go. And they're like, this is illegal. You can't ship this. I was like, well then. They're like, this is a class 3 substance. It's flammable. And I was like, well, I'm going to turn around now and figure this out.
Books are flammable too, I guess.
Is there a way that you could maybe sign the book up with a different distributor, like a foreign distributor, and get it more mass production? Is that something you're interested in seeking out, or is it even something that's possible?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the only way for me to kind of get it to be published in other countries for a publisher to say, we want to publish this, do their own translation, do their own distributing. And I'm looking for that. It's like my goal, because like the most frustrating thing is like having this whole book series that is, by now it's starting to become very long. And such few people that I that I want everyone to read it, you know. That's kind of my thing, is just I want to reach everyone with it. And it's so hard to, it is sort of hard to get like the big countries to be on board. The quality of comics in foreign countries is very high, much higher than Norway, you know? So yeah, this book might be really cool for Norwegian people, but they have so many good comics in other countries that this one is just like a tiny little drop in their ocean of cool comics with amazing authors and amazing art. And I get why it's going to be hard to like kind of get it out. The first few books are a little rough, you know, my webcomic stage and all that. It doesn't convince all the publishers.
I really enjoyed it. Like, I thought it's really fun and really interesting, like you said, because it's not necessarily a folklore mythology that we see a lot, like over here, an example in Canada. And so like, what are some of the elements that you think that people who aren't familiar with, you know, Norwegian folklore might really be drawn to?
Well, I guess people have seen trolls and Vikings and all of that stuff in media, but I kind of take my inspiration from very specific stories that people might not have heard. There's a bunch of fairy tales that you hear as kids, and everyone has heard them, and like they're really like fun and innovative, you know. They're it's always about talking animals, it's always about trolls, it's always about like people outsmart, like the hero outsmarting the dumb troll and getting the princess. Like it is very much like that, but I think the troll aspect and just the way the mood of everything, the Scandinavian mood, kind of the dark forests, you know, everything that I kind of grew up with, I think is really cool. Like it's a cool aesthetic in general that I just want to share with everyone. And yeah, it's one thing being from, you know, another country and taking inspiration from Scandinavian folklore and making stuff about Vikings, but you know, I always feel like it's more real if a person who kind of grew up with that stuff tells the story. And also those kind of stories in Norway, they are very old, and a lot of new kids, like kids today, they would rather be on their iPad instead of like hearing those stories, which is completely fine. I would have done the same thing. That can be boring for them, you know, like these old ass stories about like trolls and, you know. So I kind of wanted to wrap it in like a new wrapping paper that's shiny, so they can still get those stories, but they also get a fun new adventure that they would get if they watched a Disney movie or a Ghibli movie or so that's kind of what I'm kind of I am tricking the kids into liking this old ass weird stuff, right?
Is this the only work that you're working on, or what else are you working on? Is this like your main thing, or?
Yeah, this is my main thing. It is a full-time job. I do everything myself. I thought that like, if I only have all the time in my day to make comics, I would be able to make them so fast. And then I realized that making comics is always hard, like no matter how much time I have. So it is like, yeah, it's my whole life basically. And now I feel like I gotta complete everything like well without burning out and dying in the process. That's kind of my goal.
Is the fourth one the last one, or do you have more coming?
Yeah, the fourth one is not the last one. It is I have two more. I'm working almost on 2 books at the same time now. And that's the 5th and the 6th one. And then there's going to be more after that too. Because like after the 6th one, there's going to be like a natural kind of break in the story, but the story will continue. It was going to seem like it's ending, but it isn't. And then I'm going to start like part 2 or whatever of the story after that. And if I play my cards correctly, book 6 will come out next year too, in fall. So half a year after book 5. And we'll see how I feel around that time. But yeah, it's not, everyone keeps asking me if like every book I make is the last one. I mean, when you think about like manga and like manga artists and webcomic artists.
Oh, that can go on. They can go on.
That can go on forever. I barely scratched the surface of what a story can be, you know?
It's one of those things where it's like, if you're enjoying it and there's still more to say, why stop, you know?
Yeah, I know. I feel like I figure something new out every day that I want to tell. And it's always like super exciting. Like every time I make a new book, I feel like, oh, this is the one, like this is the most exciting one. And I feel that for like every single every single book I have planned, every single book I'm making at the moment is my favorite book kind of deal. I'm really happy about, but I haven't like
you still have the passion. Yeah.
But it takes so much time. I'm actually the stuff that I'm writing now, I came up, as I said, I did come up with that for over 5 years ago. So scenes that I'm gonna be drawing soon, I have been thinking about for like 5 years, and just I'm looking forward to getting that stuff out. Because that will make room for more, you know? I can only think about so many things at the same time before I kind of go crazy. Like I don't have room in my brain for like 10 books. I have room for like 2 when I plan.
So since you're doing everything, what's your favorite part of the process?
Oh, that's a good question. I do like making backgrounds because I feel like it's the one where people won't see that I made a mistake. It's often the fastest part. So it's very satisfying when I finish a background page. Like it's like, oh, I finished that page. Because right now I do pages in steps. So I sketch the whole book. And then I do line art for like 20 pages. And then I do the backgrounds for like 20 pages. And then I do the shading for like 20 pages. And then I keep doing that until the book is done. So when it comes to the background stage, I'm like, it's probably the chillest stage. And the most stressful stage is sketching. Because that's where everything goes. Like all the storytelling, all the writing, like everything is in the sketch, literally everything. Like all the other stuff is just making it look pretty, you know? So I make sure the sketches are very like, that I don't think like, oh, I will fix this later. I'll fix this post later. I'll fix this sentence later. I try to fix everything in the moment so I don't end up with problems later. Basically, I'm trying to solve everything up front. Yeah, that's kind of just like a new thing I've been doing. I have not been consistent in comic making at all. Took a long time to figure out how to do it.
To get like a good flow
efficient.
And everything.
Yeah, it took ages. It took several years. I feel like I got it now, maybe.
Because as you mentioned that you feel like some of your earlier works are like a bit rough. So like, how would you say that your style has evolved over time working on these books?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I did mention it was kind of rough. Because when I first started drawing the pages, I was like, I'm just going to use the sketch and I'm just going to color the sketch and we'll see where it lands. That's it. It was very messy. It was kind of inconsistent. So I did that for a bit and I'm like, no, this is too messy and too inconsistent. So I started doing line art, just traditional. As a concept artist, you usually don't do line art. You usually just paint everything really fast because that's how concept art kind of works. But when I started doing line art, I'm like, okay, this is better. So I started doing that. And I know I talked a lot of smack about the first book, like the art style, but actually I do like it quite a bit. I think it's nice. I do want to admit that I don't like the second one. I don't like the second book.
Why not?
Especially, I don't like the art in it because I was very confused about my own art style at the time. So I kind of started leaning a bit more and more to like Disney-ish style. And everything is kind of, I don't know, everything, it doesn't look that good. Like I think the first book looks better. So that's kind of a setback in my own mind. But then it came to the third book and I started ditching the Disney vibe. Because when I was in school, I was kind of training to become a Disney artist. Like I wanted to be a concept artist at Disney. That was like a goal that I didn't do, but still. But when it came to the third book, I'm like, you know what? I haven't checked out anime and manga in a while. So I started looking at that style instead. Because like in art school, if you draw anime and manga, they're gonna whip you. Like you're not allowed. So I did not draw anything anime manga stuff, like anything inspired by that when I was in art school. Not because like I really wanted to, like I just didn't cross my mind to do it. So then I came back to looking at like anime manga stuff and I was like, oh, this is better. This is way better than what Disney is doing. This is like the highest form of art. So I started being more inspired by like manga Eastern artists, and I feel like that made the third book look a lot better. Like I like the way the third book looks. And then in the fourth one, I didn't change too much. I just changed my so you can see that every book looks very different. I'm not the kind of person who will continue with a style. If I know that there's a better one that I can make, then I try the better one. And I will just, if people see the inconsistencies, most people don't, but if they do, like, that's fine by me, that it's a little bit inconsistent. If it was a webcomic, it would be. It's usually how they are. So I changed a little bit in the fourth book, but I think I settled with my art style in the fourth book. And the fifth one is made exactly the same way as the fourth one. So I hope that I kind of have settled on the style, that I will continue making that one better. Because when it comes to art styles, you do need to develop an art style for a while for it to be like good. Like switching all the time, it's not that healthy, you know?
What would you say is like the biggest difference between moving from that more Disney-fied style to a more manga-inspired style? Like what would be the subtle changes that would be made?
Good question. It's a lot about the eyes, I guess. I feel like Disney style, it puts a lot of effort into a character looking. They will have a lot of shape language. They will say that the silhouette is the most important thing in a character, and that everything kind of needs to be stylized. So the hair is very stylized, the face is very stylized, the clothes are stylized, everything. I kind of feel like that makes it look like a cartoon character. What manga often does, not always, But a lot of times manga artists will make stuff look more naturalistic. Like they will not stylize the clothes as much. I kind of feel like they are often stylized characters in a real world, kind of. They feel very real to me, which is, a lot of people would probably disagree with that. But I just wanted my characters to look a bit more real and less cartoony, I guess. I just wanted to go away from that cartoony style where everything is kind of like exaggerated and over the top. Like if you've seen some behind the scenes stuff on animated movies, you will see the concept art and the characters when they're drawn. It's so exaggerated, right? Like it's stretched faces and it's like bulging eyes, and it's a lot of things that in Western animation has been the norm for the past 100 years, you know? While a lot of times in Eastern style or in like manga and anime, the movements and the expressions are, unless you do like chibi style or like the, you know, the crazy anime expressions, you know, where they get like, unless you do that, it looks real to me. Like if you see a Ghibli movie, the characters to me look real. Like they have weight, they have, their clothes act like clothes would in reality. Like it's, yeah.
When it comes to conceptualizing your characters, do you have a favorite one to work with?
I do have favorite characters. Favorite to make. Oh, maybe if you read the third book, or actually the second one, Lotta is a favorite to design, I think, because she didn't start out as a character in that story. She comes in the second book, so she is one of the main characters, but I made her as a character that I was using when I was doing concept art at school. I would use her as like just like a figure in my concept art, just to have a person there. And I started just really liking her. And I think her look is really unique. She's based off an indigenous group of people in Norway, or in the north basically, that's called Sami. If you've seen Frozen, they also have a group, like they have the people they meet in that movie are also based off Sami people.
Okay.
Yeah. So she was just really fun to work with, and she does magic, which is really fun. The magic element in my book kind of comes in the second book a lot. And actually, Lotta has made the whole story a lot bigger than what I planned it to be, because Lotta was just supposed to be a little character that was only going to be in one book, and she wasn't going to come back. But she's everyone's favorite character now. Maybe that's why it's so fun, because she's everyone's favorite. But I love her. She has so much like spunk and character, and she's very needed.
So you mentioned that she's like a fan favorite. Do you have a lot of interaction with the fans and the fandom?
Well, most of my fans in Norway are kids, you know? And it's not always they can make a full sentence when they are in front of someone that they like. But when it comes to the kids, yeah, they are honest. They're very good, honest fans, I think. I do have adult fans too, because I mean, it wasn't meant to be a children's book, really. I just made it the way I wanted to, but it is made towards children in Norway, so it's called a children's book. But the adults have different opinions than the kids. The kids' favorite characters, the girls like Sonja the best, and some like Lotta. But I haven't met a single adult who likes Sonja as their favorite character. Actually, a lot of people, yeah, and which I think is really funny. And Espen too. Espen is like every boy's favorite, but he's also everyone's favorite. And some kids also like the side characters the most, like Lotta, and they like Kjetil. I think he's called Kjetil in the English version too. I can't remember, or maybe Kettle. is one.
Yeah, my version says kettle.
Kettle. Yeah, Kettle was the name I gave because I wrote it in English first, you know, the story. So I called him Kettle. That is not a really Norwegian name. The Norwegian version is Kjetil. So when they translated it, they made him into Kjetil, and I'm like, okay, I guess he just has a different name now. But yeah, Kettle. Kettle is a lot of people's favorite too. Well, he's more in the later, in the fourth book.
Do you do a lot of promotion for the books? Like, do you have time to like go out and promote? Like, what is the promotion situation? Like, do you have to do that yourself or?
Oh, I used to. My publisher often gets like messages from like libraries and schools that want me to come and talk about the book, and I used to do that in the beginning, like when I published the first book, because I was pretty broke. I hadn't gotten any royalties yet, so you get paid for those visits, you know. So I started doing them, but I didn't like it. Like at least in the beginning, no one knew about the book. Often these libraries and schools, they get funding to do these things, so they kind of just go, oh, let's just get this person, and like none of the kids in the class knew who I was or what the comic was, and it was so embarrassing. Like I kind of haven't recovered now. I bet a lot of people would know about it, and it would probably be way more fun. I do it sometimes if it's like a big event, a lot of kids in the same place. It takes a lot of time, you know. I got to travel, and I feel like every moment I have to spend trying to make the books good. But I do book signings I used to when Corona wasn't a thing. I haven't done many since then. And so those would be my like fan interactions. Other than that, I don't really like talking in front of kids. I guess they scare me a little bit.
They can be quite brutal.
Yeah. It was fine though. It's always been fine. It's more a me problem than like the kids. That's very
Now my daughter is really interested. She saw them on my shelf and she was like, I want to read them. She's just at that age where she's just learning.
How old is she?
She's 4. So she's just learning how to read, but she flipped through it. She's like, look at all the pictures and like all this stuff. And she picked out like
she wasn't scared.
No, she likes scary things. She's like,
she does great. Because I did too when I was a kid. So I would have loved little scary moments in my media.
That's one of the things. Like I like some of the imagery in it because it is ominous, but not to the point where it's too much. But like it does have tension and it does have stakes and it does have that kind of weight to it that I feel like kids really enjoy that. You know, that
I
kind
do.
of.
I feel like a lot of adults don't take kids seriously. That they have to like. If it has a speck of blood, if it has any like violence or adult themes, that it's only for teenagers or adults. But kids develop fast, you know. When you are 10 years old, when you're 12, you're not gonna read the adult stuff. You're not gonna read the little kid stuff. You do want something in between, and that's kind of the sweet spot that I want to hit, because I feel like adults can still enjoy that kind of stuff. It's very important to me that they both enjoy it. So if it was a webcomic still, I would have probably gone a bit more overboard with the violence. But my publisher has never told me to not do a violent thing. Like if I want to do something that's I would consider violent or scary, usually they think it's completely okay. They're very progressive here, I guess, because I feel like I would have been told off in America. But it's kind of like manga, you know. Manga is kind of that's kind of brutal. I remember I saw the movie Princess Mononoke when I was 12, I think, for the first time. I was blown away because I had never seen such a violent animated movie before. But I was mesmerized, and it's still my favorite movie.
I saw it young too, and it's like it makes you take it more seriously. You're like, wow, this is really serious.
I was on my edge of my seat all the time, thinking what's going to happen, and I feel like kids are missing that a lot. If you feel like everything is always going to be okay, then you're not going to care, because like then the comic might as well be about something else. But it is about, you know, like Vikings and trolls and they're all fighting, they're all like mad at each other, there's conflict, and not everyone is going to be okay from that. And kids, you know, they can handle that.
No, I definitely think so. I think they also appreciate that. I feel like they appreciate when they can feel they're not being condescended to, because everybody knows when they're being condescended to and nobody likes it. So
I think that's why I'm so scared of kids, because I don't want to treat them like kids. Like I just want to have a conversation with them. So, but I feel like that's a little hard too, I guess, because I'm just like, hey, how you doing? You know? And they're like, oh my, what am I supposed to say? Yeah, but it's fun though. It's so much fun writing for kids though. Like, it's great. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Do you still read a lot of comics in your spare time, or like because you're working on your own, has that altered your relationship with them when it comes to viewing them for entertainment value?
I can still enjoy comics just as well as anything else, but I never, believe it or not, never been such a big comic reader, even though I gone through my fair share of Batman and Spider-Man comics, because I have my obsession stages where I just go insane and I want to read everything. And also I read a fair share of manga in my years. I loved doing that when I was a kid. But my biggest inspirations are usually from movies. And as I said before, I really want the books to read like movies. I want it to flow like a movie, because I always wanted to make a movie. And if I can't make a movie with other people, I gotta make it by myself. So yeah, movies and games and stuff, that's very because I kind of feel like that's the way you think about comics. When you see it, you see it move, even though it isn't moving. And I feel like if you only read other comics and stuff, you might misunderstand what the comics are trying to do. I don't think there's many comics who doesn't want to like make the art look like it's kind of real, and yeah, like you want to pretend like it's moving.
No, I get that. It's like seeking like inspiration from various points. I mean, it can only enrich you, like the more different things that you see, and it can only enrich like the work that you end up putting out. So
yeah, I feel like creators need to consume from very a lot of different things to be able to figure out what their own expression is going to be. Like, I think that's why manga is very misunderstood, because a lot of time the manga artists are usually not just inspired by other mangas. So you clearly see when someone is inspired by a manga. Like you can see if they're Western and they read manga and then they try to copy the manga style, you can see right away that it's someone who consumed manga, who's making a manga now, or a manga, whatever. While like the really good ones are people who are just like kind of drawing, have the same skills you gotta have to be an artist, you know, all the fundamentals and all the things you gotta go through in art school. And then because of limitations, they are making manga because of that. Like manga is made because it's expensive to print colors. So everything's got to be in black and white. And that's just how their style has developed. Trying to mimic that style without understanding it is like, yeah, it's always just going to be a copy of them. Yeah. So I always try to like make my own expression, like, okay, I don't want this to be someone else's stuff. Like I want it to be whatever I want it to be, you know?
So you mentioned earlier that at the start you weren't very confident in the writing portion of the like figuring out that part of it. How did your confidence grow in that area?
Well, every time I came to a scene that was hard to write, I would just write it. I would just kind of instead of making the scene different or avoiding it, I would just do it head on, and I would spend days just staring at a blank page, being like, what do I write here? What do I start with? Do I start with the dialogue? Do I start with the drawings? Because that's a That's a thing too. If it's very dialogue heavy, I start with the writing because that's going to dictate what the characters are going to look like. If it's very action based, I start with the characters because that's going to dictate what they're going to say. So I have just tackled every hard writing challenge head on, but I'm really lucky that I have my editors that I can show it to and be like, what do you guys think? I don't think this is working. And they will honestly tell me if it's working or not, which is very important. So if people want to do that themselves and they don't have editors, just ask a friend. Does this make sense? Ask an honest friend. Make the scene the best you can. Ask a friend if it makes sense. And if they go, you might want to change it, then do change it. I have to change it all the time. I change speech bubbles. I change the drawings. I just want it to work, The number one priority is making it readable, Like it has to be readable. That's the least amount it has to be is readable. And then it can be good after that. After you understand it, then you can start making it good. So I guess I just have done it a lot now. So it's better, but I'm trying to improve both, both my drawing and I think both are equally important. They really are.
So when it comes to like people in say Canada or the US, and if they're interested in helping you get this like out there, like what is something that they can do? Like, can they like contact a publisher? Like, is there anything they can do to like help distribution with it? Yeah,
they can, if they want to, contact publishers and say, hey, have you guys heard about this comic? I would really like it in this country, like it has 5 books or whatever, how many books it has and blah, 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 like it's popular. Yeah, of course. I think if enough people did that, I think it would have a good chance. But like that's work, for other people. I don't want to give people homework and be like, hey guys, spread my shit. I have a Twitter that I mostly use for fan art and stuff because since most people don't have access to my comics, posting a lot of stuff about the comic, most people don't even know what I'm talking about. So I'm mostly doing fan art and stuff on my Twitter, but once in a while I'll drop a little like, hey, I have a comic. If you guys know anyone who wants to publish it, it's all here. Just, just contact me and we can figure something out. And I'm sure I will land something, sometime. It just takes time, and being, having, what is it called? Being patient is really important. And it has always been important when it comes to comics.
Yeah.
Making comics,
I feel like a lot of people don't realize how long it really takes. Anything, like be it comics, animation, like it takes a long time.
It does, yeah. And building a brand, I feel like it's almost like a business, but the most important thing for me is always just making the comics. So yeah, sure, whatever. Maybe the comic will be published in Canada or the US in a few years, or maybe it will take 5 years but as long as I kind of make the best comic that I can, they will hopefully not reject it because it wasn't good enough. It will only be because they didn't know about it or they didn't have space or something like that. So that's the only thing I can do. Try to make it as good as I can. Yeah, and I think the opportunity will come one day.
So what is one thing that you would like people to take away from your work?
I just want them to have a good time, I guess. I want them to like kind of have the same feeling I had when I read that kind of stuff when I was a kid. When I read all those and watched all those movies and comics that inspired me, I want people to have that feeling, just feeling like you got introduced to like this whole new cool universe that you just want to live in and think about and talk about. Like, yeah, that would be great. Yeah, that's what all artists want. They want the response. The money is not that important. It's the response. Good response.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me today. And please tell all the
Thank
people
you.
where they can find you.
Yeah, well, I have a Instagram and Twitter. It's the same username. It's Malin and then a T and then Falch, like it's my name, but there's a T in between because I have a middle name that starts with a T. I'm sure you can post it in the description or something. But yeah, I think I am only on Twitter and Instagram, and the books are out in a few countries. Actually, it is out in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Poland, Bulgaria. Yeah, I think that's it. So if you live in any of those countries, you might be able to get a copy.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It was great.
Thank you for having me.
So you made it to the end. What do you think? Have you read this series? Or if you haven't, would you like to get your hands on it? If you are interested, you can help Malin out by tweeting out to publishers and the like if you're so inclined. These are some beautiful books. They're so nicely bound. They're so interesting. They're so much fun. Kids really like them, and they're really fun, accessible starter comics. If you're trying to start your kids on comics or if they're into that sort of thing. So yes, that is the story of these 3 volumes right here. The lore, it grows. Thanks so much again to Malin for taking some time to talk with me, and thank you for taking some time to listen. I hope that you enjoyed and found it as interesting as I did. I will of course have all of her links down below. So again, thank you, and of course there will be more videos as always coming soon, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.